You've felt it before, haven't you? That strange gaze, the way her eyes linger just a second too long. It feels flattering, intoxicating, even. Like you've finally been seen in a world where most people look right through you. But beneath that warmth lies something else, a quiet assessment, a silent rewriting of your story. She's not falling for you. She's falling for a character only she can see. It starts small, a compliment that doesn't quite match who you are, a conversation where she seems excited but not by what you said, rather by what she's convinced you meant. You laugh, you nod, you go along. It feels good to be wanted, so you perform. You lean into the role, and without even realizing it, you begin to drift from yourself. What you don't realize, what most men never realize, is that you're not the protagonist. You're a projection, a blank canvas waiting for her brush. She's not malicious, she may not even be aware, but in her mind she's writing a story, one where you are not you, but a symbol of the man she hopes to meet, to fix, to transform. Carl Jung saw this long before modern psychology gave it a name. He didn't romanticize it. He didn't wrap it in hopeful language. He dissected it with precision, and what he found was disturbing. Jung called it projection, but he went further. He discovered the animus, the masculine image inside every woman. An internal figure, not shaped by the men she meets, but by her culture, her father, her past, and her fantasies. And when she projects this inner animus outward, she isn't seeing a man, she's seeing a dream, a role, a mask. And that mask, it has nothing to do with you. This is the invisible theater so many men walk into, blind and eager. And when the fantasy begins to crack, when the real you begins to show, not the version she dreamed, but the man you are, she doesn't rewrite the story. She recasts the actor. You're confused. You ask yourself what went wrong. But the truth is, you stopped acting. You stopped matching the script. And in her story, there is no room for improvisation. Most men never see this happening because being wanted feels so much like being known. You mistake attraction for connection. You confuse desire with understanding. And by the time the illusion breaks, it's already too late. But here's the truth most won't tell you. You were never loved for who you were. You were loved for how well you played the role. She never meant to deceive you. That's the part most men miss. She didn't wake up one day and decide to project a fantasy onto you. It happened silently, almost innocently, like a dream forming behind her eyes before either of you knows it's taken hold. But Jung saw it clearly. He knew that inside every woman lives an image, not of you, but of him. The animus, a mental archetype, a silent presence that whispers what a man should be, how he should act, what he should represent. And the danger begins when she mistakes that whisper for reality. It's not about bad intentions, it's about unconscious forces. The animus is shaped over years, by her father's absence or dominance, by cultural stories, by her experiences with men who disappointed her or made her feel alive. All of that emotion, that unmet longing, that unspoken pain, it collects. And when she meets you, she doesn't just see a man. She sees a stage, a place for the animus to come alive. You may notice it in the way she praises you too quickly, or how she believes in you before she even knows you. It sounds like support, but it's not rooted in who you are. It's rooted in who she needs you to be. And here's the dark truth Jung exposed. When a woman's animus is immature or unintegrated, it doesn't serve her. It controls her. It speaks through her with certainty, judgment, even rage. It makes her argue without cause, dominate without awareness, moralize with no room for dialogue. Not because she's cruel, but because she's possessed. Not by demons, but by the unconscious. Jung called it a spiritual possession, a kind of trance where the woman acts not from her own center, but from a borrowed voice she believes is hers. And the tragedy? She doesn't know it's happening. She thinks she's standing in her truth. But really, she's reenacting a script written long ago. A script where you're not a partner, you're a prop. And men, you fall for this not because you're foolish, but because no one ever taught you the language of projection. No one warned you that love, when driven by the unconscious, is not intimacy. It's illusion. And the deeper the illusion, the harder the fall. You feel chosen, desired, seen, but the man she wants doesn't exist. He's a ghost, a memory, a sculpture built from pieces of other men. And you just happen to resemble the outline. And when you inevitably disappoint that outline, not because you did anything wrong, but because you were never him, everything changes. The warmth cools, the eyes no longer linger, the script falls apart, and you're left asking why she turned cold when all you did was be real. But that's the point, isn't it? You stopped being the dream. And she wasn't in love with you. She was in love with the dream. You tell yourself she loved you, that this connection was real, that the way she looked at you meant something. And it did, but not in the way you think. She was looking at a reflection, not of you, but of something buried deep within her own psyche. A silhouette of desire, a memory of what love should feel like. You stepped into her life and unknowingly fit the shape. And so she poured her heart into that outline. Not into you. You thought you were being chosen. You thought you were different. But you were just the latest casting call. Another actor who happened to match the role she'd been rehearsing since girlhood. And when you deviated from the script, when your lines didn't match her expectations, the lights dimmed, the stage collapsed, and the story ended. Not with a conversation, not with honesty, but with withdrawal, confusion, and a quiet rewriting of the past. She was never really in love with me, you whisper one night, finally starting to see the cracks. But that's only half the truth. She was never really in love with herself either. Jung understood that projection doesn't just hurt the one being projected onto, it robs the projector of reality. When a woman is ruled by her unconscious animus, she loses the capacity to truly see. And a man who is unaware of this dynamic becomes complicit in his own erasure. You start shaping yourself to fit her fantasy. You become more agreeable. You avoid conflict. You start asking what version of you she finds most attractive, most comforting, most acceptable. And piece by piece, you disappear. But Jung didn't stop at diagnosis. He offered a way out, not through confrontation, but through integration. He called it individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a whole person, distinct from the fantasies and expectations of others. Most men never take that path. They stay on the stage, changing masks, chasing applause, trying to earn the love of a woman who doesn't even know the real them, and when it falls apart, they blame her. They call her cold, confusing, manipulative, but the truth is harder. You never asked if she saw you. You only asked if she wanted you, because being wanted felt like enough. But being wanted is not the same as being known, and being known is not the same as being loved. This is the trap. The ancient psychological dance between the feminine projection and the masculine need for affirmation. One projects, the other performs, and both leave empty. Jung's warning was clear. As long as you seek your worth through the eyes of another, you will never know who you are. You will only know the role you're playing. And one day, when the curtain falls, you'll realize you never even wrote the script. You might be wondering, how do you escape it? How do you break the cycle of being cast, performing, and discarded? Jung's answer wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. It wasn't something you could buy in a self-help book or learn in a weekend seminar. It was a brutal, lifelong initiation. He called it individuation. Not just a psychological process, but a spiritual one. A breaking down of everything false. A stripping away of every mask, every performance, every borrowed belief about who you're supposed to be. And it begins in silence. Not the kind of silence that makes you feel calm. The kind that makes you feel like you're dying. The silence where there's no woman to impress, no role to play, no eyes watching you. Just you, and the parts of yourself you've never dared to face. The insecure part. The broken part. The part that still craves her approval. That still dreams of being enough, of finally being seen and loved without condition. That part isn't weak, it's the beginning, the entry point into something real. Because until you confront those pieces of yourself, you'll keep trying to outsource them. You'll keep asking women to carry your insecurity, to hold your shame, to fix your self-doubt. You'll call it love, but it will always be dependency in disguise. And that's what Jung knew. That true wholeness begins the moment you stop blaming women for not seeing you and start seeing yourself. It's terrifying to realize that your heartbreaks weren't just about what she did, but about what you refused to face in yourself. That every betrayal was an echo of the moment you abandoned your own soul to be chosen by hers. You thought being picked made you a man, but it never did. Because a man who needs to be picked isn't a man. He's a child, a performer, a servant of the very illusion he claims to resent. The real transformation begins the day you stop auditioning. When you stop asking, "Am I what she wants?" and start asking, "Am I who I'm proud to be?" That's individuation. It's not cold. It's not distant. It's not about rejecting women or building walls. It's about standing, finally, fully in your own presence. Without apology, without mask, without the desperate need to be needed. And the irony? That's when everything changes. Because the man who no longer needs to perform is the one who holds the deepest kind of power, quiet power, unshakable presence, a calm that doesn't chase or plead or shrink. He doesn't beg to be seen, he sees himself, and in that seeing he becomes undeniable. But here's the paradox no one wants to admit. When you finally stand in your own truth, calm, grounded, untouchable, the world grows quiet around you, not in awe, but in discomfort. People won't know what to do with you. They'll sense it before they can name it. That something about you feels different, not angry, not aggressive, just still. And that stillness will shake them because it doesn't beg, it doesn't perform, it doesn't bend to expectations. You're no longer predictable, no longer moldable. You no longer fit the soft categories people use to feel in control. Nice guy, player, romantic, rebel. You've stepped outside the script. You're just a man now. And that scares people more than you realize, especially women who haven't faced their own illusions. They'll say you're cold, they'll call you distant, too serious, emotionally unavailable. But what they really mean is they can't reach you anymore. Not the way they used to. Not through the roles. Not through their projection. Because now you see the game, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to playing dumb, to shrinking yourself into a version that earns affection. You can't pretend you don't notice the performance, the manipulation, the unconscious demands to make you small in order for her to feel big. And the truth is, she's not doing it out of malice. She's just doing what she's always done, projecting her unlived potential onto a man and then resenting him when he doesn't deliver. Jung saw it happen over and over again. The man becomes the fantasy becomes the prison, and the moment he tries to step out to become something real, she doesn't follow. She clings to the dream. But the individuated man doesn't argue with dreams. He doesn't negotiate with illusions. He simply steps away. And that stepping away, quiet, clean, unapologetic, is the most terrifying act of all, because it forces her to see the void she's been avoiding, the emptiness she's tried to fill with control, with dominance, with moral superiority. And maybe, just maybe, if she's ready, she'll stop running. She'll turn inward. She'll begin her own individuation. But that's not your work to do. You're not here to wake her up. You're here to stop putting yourself to sleep. You're here to stop performing, to stop shrinking, to stop bending like wet clay into the shape someone else needs. Because the moment you stop doing that, the moment you reclaim your shape, your depth, your presence, everything changes. And the people who once praised you for being such a good man, for being agreeable, romantic, predictable, they'll start to resent you, because now you belong to yourself. And a man who belongs to himself is the rarest and most dangerous kind of man there is. You don't raise your voice. You don't need to. You don't argue to be understood. You understand yourself. And that's the difference. The world will call this arrogance, but it's not. It's clarity. There's a quiet that comes over a man who no longer seeks to prove himself. He walks differently, speaks with fewer words. He's not trying to be mysterious. He simply doesn't need to fill silence with noise. That alone unsettles people, because most can't sit in silence without unraveling. And women, especially those still trapped in the dream of the perfect man, will project even harder. They'll accuse you of being emotionally distant, They'll say you're overthinking, too serious, too much in your head. But that's not what's really happening. What's really happening is this. They can't move you, not like they used to. You're no longer on the stage. You've stepped off. You've dropped the script. You're no longer trying to meet their expectations, play the role, satisfy the fantasy. And that, more than anything, breaks the illusion. Because without that role, they don't know how to relate to you. You're not the lover, the savior, the rebel, the project. You're just you. And that kind of man, real, unmasked, grounded, forces them to confront themselves. Jung once said the gods have become diseases. In ancient times, people would say they were possessed by a god. Today, we call it neurosis, anxiety, obsession, the same patterns, just different names. Men who seek their identity through women, who say things like, she's my everything, or I'd do anything for her, think they're being romantic. But Jung would tell you that what you call love is often spiritual sickness, because you've handed your soul to someone else and called it devotion. You've made her the carrier of your purpose, your self-worth, your future. But here's the brutal truth. No woman, no matter how loving or wise, can carry that weight for you. She will drop it. She must drop it, because it was never hers to hold. And when she does, when she looks at you with that cold confusion, when she backs away without warning, when she says, I don't know who you are anymore, it's not betrayal. It's inevitability. You were never supposed to hand her your soul in the first place. That was your job, to carry your own soul, to hold your own center, to walk through the fire of loneliness, of rejection, of silence, and not collapse, to stand, not because someone else believes in you, but because you've remembered how to believe in yourself. That's what Jung meant by individuation. It's not a spiritual hobby. It's a psychological death and rebirth. It's the destruction of every false layer you built to survive, so that something real, something unshakable can emerge. And when that happens, you don't become hard. You don't become cold. You become true. And when you become true, not perfect, not polished, but real, something unexpected happens. You stop attracting women who want a performance. You stop pulling in those who need you to be their project, their fantasy, their missing piece. That entire dynamic collapses. Because you're no longer broadcasting the signal of a man willing to abandon himself just to be loved. Instead, you begin to attract something else entirely. A woman who has faced herself. You'll recognize her not by her beauty or charm or how deeply she desires you. You'll recognize her by what she doesn't do. She doesn't idolize you. She doesn't flood you with praise. She doesn't try to mold you into a better version of the man she's imagined since childhood, because she doesn't need to. She's done the work. She's walked through her own fire. She's met her own animus, that inner masculine voice that once made her chase control, project blame, demand perfection, and she's dismantled it, piece by piece, truth by truth. So when she stands before you, it's not as a goddess looking for worship, it's as a human being, whole, awake, grounded in her own presence. There is no seduction, no grand performance, no manipulation of silence or affection, just a quiet steadiness, a calm that mirrors your own. Not because she's trying to match you, but because she's finally met herself. And when that happens, when two people who are no longer performing finally meet, there is no spark in the way Hollywood taught you. No obsession, no butterflies from anxiety or trauma bonding. There's just presence. She sees you, not as a savior, not as a symbol, but as a man. And she doesn't want to change your story. She wants to walk beside you in hers. No scripts, no masks, no fantasies. That kind of love doesn't beg, it doesn't cling, it doesn't need reassurance every hour, because it's not rooted in fear. It's rooted in freedom. Freedom to walk away, freedom to stay, freedom to love without losing yourself. But let me be honest with you, most men will never get here, not because they're incapable, but because they quit before the breakthrough. They choose comfort over confrontation, fantasy over truth, performance over pain. They settle. They choose to be seen as someone they're not, rather than risk being invisible while becoming who they truly are. And so they keep playing the same role again and again, never realizing that the stage was the prison all along. but not you, not anymore, because now you know. And once you know, truly know, you can't go back. You can't unsee the patterns. You can't pretend the mask fits. You can't stomach the empty compliments, the conditional affection, the feeling of being loved only when you behave. You've tasted something deeper now. Not just freedom, but self-respect. And once that seed is planted, it grows quietly, stubbornly, until the soil of your old identity can no longer hold it. You begin to shed things, not just toxic relationships, but old beliefs. The belief that love must be earned through sacrifice. The belief that your worth is determined by someone else's desire. The belief that being a man means being everything to everyone but yourself. Those lies begin to burn, and in their place, something ancient begins to rise. The quiet strength of alignment, of living not for applause, not for validation, but for truth. Even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. That's when you become dangerous, not because you threaten others, but because you can no longer be controlled. You are no longer bribed by beauty, seduced by admiration, or weakened by loneliness. You've walked through all of that, and on the other side, you found yourself. And now women are no longer your mirror. They're no longer the vessel through which you seek wholeness. They become something else, something sacred, not because they complete you, but because they don't have to. They are no longer mothers to your wounded boy. They are not nurses to your emotional wounds. They are partners, mirrors, allies, not saviors. And you love them not because you need them, but because you choose them from a place of fullness, of stillness, of knowing. That's the kind of love Jung pointed toward, not the fiery highs and lows of projection, not the addictive fantasy of the perfect woman, but the grounded connection between two people who have burned away their illusions and can finally see each other clearly. No scripts, no roles, just truth. But let me tell you something most won't. This path is not popular. It's not applauded. No one will cheer you on when you start walking away from the noise, from the performance, from the places that once made you feel wanted. You will be called cold, distant, arrogant. You will be misunderstood. Because when you become untouchable, not emotionally shut down, but grounded in truth, you unsettle the world that profits from your confusion, from your weakness, from your need to be needed. But you're done feeding that system, done selling yourself for love, done asking others to tell you who you are, because now you know you are the author, not the actor. So here you are. After everything, the masks, the heartbreak, the roles you once clung to like lifelines, you've come face to face with the truth. No one is coming to save you. And that's not a tragedy. That's your liberation. Because from this moment forward, you stop waiting. You stop hoping that someone out there will finally see the real you and grant you permission to exist. You stop begging for the kind of love that you should have first given yourself. Carl Jung didn't leave us with instructions. He left us with a warning. He said that the man who refuses to confront himself, who avoids the fire, who chooses comfort over confrontation, becomes a slave to other people's projections, especially the projections of women. But he also left us with a challenge: to walk the path few ever dare to walk, the path of individuation. To stop blaming women for the roles you volunteered to play, to stop seeking identity through someone else's eyes, to stop measuring your worth by how wanted you are, to stop performing, to start choosing yourself fully, unapologetically, without needing anyone's permission or approval. Because here's the final truth: the man who chooses himself cannot be manipulated. He cannot be seduced by performance. He cannot be reduced to a character in someone else's fantasy. He becomes the author. And when you become the author, not just of your decisions, but of your identity, you break the cycle. You stop repeating the tragedy. You no longer dance with shadows. You walk in light. And if you've come this far, if something deep in your chest stirred as you listen to this, don't let it fade. Don't let this be just another idea you consume and forget. Because there's another man out there, one who's still trapped, still performing, still waiting to be chosen. And he needs to hear what you just heard. He needs to remember what you just remembered. So don't just listen, Share this truth, live this truth. Let the illusions burn, let the false selves die, and from their ashes rise, not as a perfect man, but as a whole one. And that, my brother, is enough. Always has been, always will be.